What's up, everybody? Welcome into the PFF NFL show. I'm not tall enough to be Steve Palazzolo. He's not Irish enough to be Sam Monson. It's Trevor Sikkema and Dalton Wasserman here with you guys to talk a little bit of football. In case you guys missed it last week or over the last couple of weeks, Sam and Steve, they're now on the Check the Mic podcast. You guys should go check that out. But we're continuing the legacy of fantastic PFF content here with my guy Dalton. And today we're going to talk about division previews. We're jumping into all of the division previews that we're going to hit before the season kicks off. Today we're starting with the NFC East. We're going to have a good time. We're going to talk about offensive and defensive MVPs, some breakout players, some best rookies, and where we think your favorite team is going to end up when the season is all done. Dalton, how you doing, my guy?
Fantastic. Up extra early on a Monday, earlier than I would usually be up. But what better to do with just over a week to go before opening day than talk ball and see a preview of we're going to get to every division, but starting actually with my New York Jets in the AFC East. So it's going to be a fun time.
See, normally I'd give you a little bit of crap because it's not that early. Like, it's only 8:30 here on the East Coast. So you saying that, I'd kind of give you a little bit of crap on a Monday morning. You say you sleep in a little bit. But the college football season is here, and you and Max Chadwick are our college football diehards over on the College Football Show. Congrats to calling the Georgia Tech upset, by the way. So I'll give you a little bit of a pass because, you're basically up all night watching all the college, all 22 on Saturday and Sunday. So I'll give you a little bit of a pass here, buddy.
Absolutely. Look, you just gotta call them when it matters and stay hot, right? I mean, you call out an upset on the first game of the season. There's obviously some pressure that comes with that, but enough research goes into it. You feel good about those calls. We'll see how many more I can get moving forward.
I'm excited to continue to listen to you and Max talk about college ball for the rest of the season. Obviously, like this past weekend, a little bit of a teaser, a little bit of an appetizer, but it gave us the full college football experience. What was the we'll get into NFL, I promise, guys, but wasn't it Montana State versus, what was it, New Mexico? I was watching the end of that game and New Mexico was down like 10 with 4 minutes and 30 seconds left to go. They somehow win that game, and it was just, man, college football is truly back. I felt like that was a beautiful weekend to be able to do it.
Absolutely, and the end of game stuff is going to get fun. You saw it too in the SMU-Nevada game. Out this year, they added a 2-minute warning into college football. It changes everything. It changes everything about clock management, and you know how college kids are with making late game errors. Look, you give them more opportunity to make those errors, especially on defense, and you're going to see a lot more games like that with a 2-minute warning in there.
All right, we're going to dig right into it. Like Dalton said, we're doing the AFC East today, going through this division. We're going to try to get to as many details as we can with these teams, previewing how we think they are going to play here in this upcoming 2024 season. But before we get to that, as a busy parent, you want to give your kids a head start on their financial future, right? But investing can often be both confusing and sometimes time-consuming. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it easy for you to set up an investment account for your child that grows with them and helps them prepare for their financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for managing your family's financial path. With a UGMA account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future. UGMA stands for Uniform Gifts to Minors Act. While your kids can't invest while they are minors, the UGMA account allows you to invest on their behalf and gives them some investments, and it gives those investments more time to grow. No contribution limits, multiple tax advantages, SIPC insured up to $500,000, plus no commission fees, just a low, flat monthly maintenance fee. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That is meetfabric.com/PFFNFL, MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. Portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Monthly minimum contributions are required. Learn more at meetfabric.com. All right, Dalton, I feel like the best way to do this is to give our division predictions, like how we think that each of the teams are going to finish. And then we'll sort of get into the nitty gritty of like, okay, this is how we think each team got there. So I'm going to start with you, my friend. How do you see the AFC East finishing? Give me the 4 teams in the right order and give me their record as well. And then we'll kind of dig into this a little more.
So I'm buying in on the talent of the New York Jets, the rebuilt offensive line, and
the homer buys into the Jets.
It's hard. It's hard not to go with the homer, but you really look at it. They are the most talented team in the division, right? And the two big problems last year: quarterback and offensive line. They went and overhauled the offensive line. In the offseason, you go get Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses at tackle. You pick up John Simpson at left guard. Hopefully you get Elijah Vera Tucker back healthy at right guard. Then you get a healthy Aaron Rodgers. And look, he may be 40 years old, but we still know what he can do even at that age, right? So I've got the Jets finishing on top at 12-5. In second place, I have the Buffalo Bills. Look, I get the doom and gloom around them, and I kind of don't. Also, I think they're better with their weaponry, especially at wide receiver, than people think they are. I think they can win plenty with Keon Coleman, with Khalil Shakir, with Curtis Samuel, with their running game. And as long as you have Josh Allen, you have a chance. I have the Dolphins at 9-8 and actually missing the playoffs. I have the Jets and the Bills in the playoffs. I have the Dolphins missing the playoffs. I have a lot of concerns about this team in the trenches that we'll get into in a little bit, especially their offensive line. Then I have the Patriots down there in last at 2-15. Now they could win a couple more games than that. I'm kind of a believer that they should just start Drake May from the outset of the season, but it looks like they still want to start Jacoby Brissett. So, and offensively, there's a lot going on there. Their offensive line's a struggle. They're trying to find something with their young weapons. I think the Patriots are really going to struggle this year.
So my list isn't too different. And man, you made a lot of talking points there that I can't wait to kind of dig into as we get to each of these four teams. But mine, I gave you crap for having the Jets at the top. I also have the Jets at the top. It's really hard for me to not get invested into this team if you tell me that certainly Aaron Rodgers is going to play a fully healthy season, but also the offensive line is even better on paper than it was the previous season. So yes, some guys have been in and out from what we were expecting from the Jets last year, but if you were in any way talking about a deep Super Bowl run or a deep playoff run, whatever it was from the Jets, it's hard to not look at this team here and think, yeah, that ceiling's pretty much the same. So I'm not going to hold the previous injuries against some of those guys that are on the roster now, knowing that now they are all fully healthy. I got the Jets at 11-6, winning this division. I got the Dolphins at 10-7. Really hard for me to look at this offense still with a lot of great pieces and think that they're not going to continue to put up enough points to win those double-digit games and get them into the wild card. I think the Dolphins get a wild card spot there. I've got the Bills just narrowly missing the playoffs here at 8-9. And, when I was going down the Bills' schedule, going game by game, there's certainly some swing here, right? The Bills, I feel like, could win anywhere from 8 to maybe even 11 games. And so I have them on the lower end of that, but we'll get to dig into a little bit why I have some concerns about a team that has been one of the premier teams in the AFC now missing the playoffs for the first time in, 5 or 6 years, I think. If the Bills don't make the playoffs, that would end a streak for them. And then the Patriots, I also have them at the 4 spot here, but I have them winning a couple more games than you do. I've got them at 4-13. So let's dive into the New York Jets first. We both had these teams at number 1 in the division, winning the division, hosting a playoff game, finally getting into the playoffs. So let's break it down a little bit here. Tell me how far you had this team going as you went through your season predictions, where you think that their final game is going to be. And then we'll talk about some offensive and defensive MVPs. We'll talk about breakout players. We'll talk about rookies. But tell me how far you think this team is going to go. And then let's just start with offensive MVPs. I think that's a good way to do it.
So I have their road ending in the divisional round. Look, and I could see them getting further with that depending on if their pass protection is substantially improved. And obviously if Aaron Rodgers, what version of Aaron Rodgers do we get? This is kind of the question, right? Is he an old quarterback coming off the Achilles injury? Is he like he was maybe 2 years ago in his last year in Green Bay? Is he around the 10th or 11th best quarterback in football, which would be a huge improvement still for the Jets considering where they've been for all these years? Or is there any chance he could get back to an MVP caliber quarterback even at 40 years old? I kind of took the middle ground there. I have them losing in the divisional round, in part because when my bracket came together, they got a matchup that I really didn't like for them, or really you don't like for anybody. I'm sure that obviously implies what it was, but I see them as a really good team who can win at least one playoff game. And if their pass protection holds up and if Aaron Rodgers holds up, they could get further than that, especially with a defense that should travel well. But I have them losing in the divisional round. And look, I know all the spotlight is in the passing game, But this team wants to be balanced, right? And you have a guy at running back in Breece Hall who was second among all running backs in scrimmage yards last year behind Christian McCaffrey. And this was behind the second worst offensive line in the league. Breece Hall's an absolute animal. He's going to run the ball a lot better when he's a home run hitter, even at his size. Long runs, powerful runs, short yardage. This is one of the true workhorse backs we have in the league. And the substantial improvement in run blocking for this team as well. You talk about guys like Morgan Moses. If Elijah Vera Tucker, too, if he plays a whole season for the first time since his rookie year, you've got an elite run blocker at guard who's finally going to stay at one position. Breece Hall is primed to have a huge year, and Aaron Rodgers is fully aware that he needs balance in his offense. I think Hall's going to get somewhere between 20-25 touches a game and be really, really efficient with them.
I mean, Breece Hall is I'm with you. He does not get enough credit for being one of those workhorse backs, right? If I said to you, like, hey, name me the true workhorse backs in the NFL, I think a lot of people would say, you know, a Derrick Henry, a Jonathan Taylor. Then they'd probably even reach for like Bijan Robinson's name. I don't think that Breece Hall gets the credit that he deserves for everything that he can do. He's a fantastic rusher. You see the overall grades there, but the receiving grade is the one that I want to point out as well, because when you talk about being a workhorse back, somebody that's on the field for all three downs, we have a stat at PFF called threat. It's essentially like wide receiver usage is kind of the layman's term for how I describe it here. It's how often are you targeted per route that you run. So how much of a focal point are you in the offense when you were on the field? Breece Hall had the highest threat percentage on the team last year at 26.6%. Now, obviously, he's not running as many routes as wide receivers do, so that sort of like goes into it. But when he was running routes, they're targeting this guy as well as wanting to target him in the running game as well. So I agree with you. I think that Breece Hall is a really great choice for offensive MVP for this team. I'm going to go with Garrett Wilson. I think that we are about to see a phenomenal season from Garrett Wilson. I think he is going to emerge as a player who is certainly in the conversation for one of the top 8, top 5, maybe even receivers that we have in this league. If Aaron Rodgers is fully healthy this year, man, I think that Garrett Wilson's going to eat. And I think that we're going to see the best version of him. You mentioned sort of, hey, everyone's thinking the Jets are going to kind of run through that passing attack. I agree with you, but it's not like it's just, oh yeah, there's a plethora of options to throw to. Like, it's not like Aaron Rodgers is throwing to like the Bears offensive weapons, you know, or something like that. It's kind of Garrett Wilson, and then we got to figure it out after that. But at the very top, it's got to be Garrett Wilson. Good thing is, Aaron Rodgers got a lot of practice with that from his days with Devontae Adams when he was force-feeding them the football during those last couple of years that they were in Green Bay together playing some really good ball. So I got Garrett Wilson for that one. What about defensive MVP? Who do you got defensive MVP for this team?
There's some really good choices on this team. Obviously, you've got Quinnen Williams up front. The players voting the top 100 apparently would say Quincy Williams, his brother, at linebacker. But I think for me, the obvious is the obvious. It has to be Sauce Gardner. And look, Trevor, I love having debates. I love having arguments about football. I can do it 24/7. One of the very few things I don't debate is that Sauce Gardner is the best corner in football. Just lights out. I know he doesn't lead the league in interceptions. 12 forced incompletions last year is a really good number, but this is as lights out a corner, honestly, I could argue, as I've seen since former Jet Darrelle Revis, Jets Hall of Famer Darrelle Revis.
Well, former Buccaneer, great.
Former Buccaneer, great
Revis,
too, of course, yeah. I mean, Sauce is just as good a cover corner as I don't think even as there is in the league right now, as we've seen in a while. I mean, I believe through his first 2 years, the only player in PFF history with a higher coverage grade in the first 2 seasons was Richard Sherman. He's on this level. And you know, cornerback play is so volatile, but you know what you're getting out of Sauce. And leading maybe the best cornerback room in the league, he is just, even if he doesn't get, 6, 7, 8 interceptions this season, he's lights out. He's one of the few guys you can see going toe-to-toe, press man with any of the top receivers in the league. And Robert Saleh even uncharacteristically started using more man coverage late in the year last year because he's got Sauce, because he's got DJ Reed, because he's got Michael Carter. Sauce is the best corner in football. He's arguably the best player on this entire team. I believe he's their defensive MVP. If something happened to him, I think it would make a big difference in coverage for them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think that he is their defensive MVP, and he is going to have an opportunity to earn that. Maybe not even just defensive MVP. Maybe, like you said, overall MVP on the team. Because when you look at the schedule that the Jets have, obviously, anytime the Jets are going to be able to be good, we've seen it with their primetime game selections over the last 2 years. People are interested and they're going to want to watch. Look at the matchups that Sauce Gardner has going into this year. Week 1, it starts out with it's either Deebo Samuel or maybe even Brandon Ayuk if Brandon Ayuk is still there, right? That's a really great 1-2 combo. Those are tough receivers to be able to guard. So the combination of Deebo and Ayuk, Calvin Ridley, Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins when they face up with the Houston Texans, Marvin Harrison Jr., DK Metcalf, Tyreek Hill twice a year, and then Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua a little bit later in the year as well. This is a gauntlet that Sauce Gardner is going to have to go up against. And if he is the best corner in football, which I agree with you, I believe he is, man, a successful year this year will straight up erase all doubt that there is any corner that is at the top with him. And I think that he will have that chance to really prove that. What about a breakout player here for the New York Jets? Who are you going with that as a breakout guy for 2024?
So, all we heard all offseason, and we still hear it to this day, is, why did they let go of Bryce Huff? And now why did they trade for Hassan Reddick? And this and that and the other thing. And where's their pass rush depth coming from? Let's get the second-year player Will McDonald out of Iowa State going. Look, he didn't play a whole lot last year. You could easily argue he should have played more. He's clearly a very talented pass rusher. I think has one of the best spin moves in the entire league, Trevor. I mean, you just look at this guy. It's this weird combination of finesse and violence as opposed to just the usual finesse spin move. He just throws himself into tackles and gets around them when he's rushing the passer. Had an excellent preseason. I got to think he's sick and tired of hearing all about Bryce Huff and Hassan Reddick and all of these guys the Jets are trying to put in front of him. Why not just give Will McDonald a chance in those passing situations, right? And you have some combination, right, of Quinnen Williams and Jermaine Johnson and Michael Clemens, and now you throw Will McDonald in there. He's a young player with a lot of pass rush talent. I get that he's a little bit thin, that you can't play him every down yet, can't play him in run defense all the time, but you have other guys for that. Let this guy pin his ears back and rush the passer, especially late in games.
Yeah, look, I think that that's a really good call out because I agree with you. I think that he is the guy that's got to step up, and I think that we've got some PFF numbers to really echo the point that you are making here. You're right, did not play a ton of snaps last year. I think it was 183 snaps overall that he played last season. I think that just speaks to how deep the Jets' defensive line was. He's in for a much bigger workload this season, but even in just those 183 snaps, 99 of them were pass rush snaps, okay? And he still earned a 15.2 pass rush win percentage. Now, that's pretty solid, especially for a rookie and especially for a guy who, I know you're a college guy. You remember the Iowa State tape. They were playing him as like a 4-eye defensive end. And it's like, what are you doing? This guy's very clearly a stand-up outside linebacker, pass rusher type of player. So he was playing at a high level while still playing. Yeah, out of position is a weird way to put it, but I guess that we would because that's more of a stand-up edge that we would want him to be, and it was more of a true hand-in-the-dirt defensive end that Iowa State was asking him to play, at least that final year of his season. So he's in a much better situation just alignment-wise with what the Jets are asking him to do because we've seen it over the last couple of years. They are allowing him to stand up and be that 2-point, more like wide 7, wide 9 type of edge rusher. That 15.2 pass rush win percentage, like I said, last year was a really good number, albeit a small sample size. This preseason, again, it's a small sample size, right? They're not playing Will McDonald a ton. He only had 14 pass rush snaps to his name. 28.2 pass rush win percentage and an elite pass rush grade. So I agree with you, man. I think that all of the talk is, oh man, Breece Hall's not there anymore. You said all the drama surrounding Hassan Reddick. I wonder if the Jets are as firm in their stance as they are because they say, all right, Hassan, you want to play for us? Fine. We'll make Will McDonald the guy. And we got faith that Will McDonald is going to be the guy. So I also think that he is going to be a big-time breakout candidate, and I think the Jets have been giving us little hints that they also believe that he's going to be their breakout candidate. Last category we got here for the Jets before we move on to the next team, best rookie. Who do you think the best rookie is going to be?
This was a tough one because you've got a team that if all goes according to plan, their rookies aren't going to be playing very much, right? You talk about their first-round pick, Olu Fashanu. That's really like he's the swing tackle this year. If Tyron Smith or Morgan Moses get hurt, you saw him play both sides in the preseason. Obviously looked more comfortable at left tackle than right tackle. He played his second preseason game at right tackle, especially in the run game, didn't look quite as comfortable, but they feel good enough about his talent pass protection, but he's not going to start. I'm going with the receiver, their third-round receiver, first pick of the third round, Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky. Look, we've got Garrett Wilson. You've got Mike Williams when he's healthy, playing the X for sure. But the depth behind those two is questionable. Xavier Gibson had a nice year last year, especially as a returner, but he's not a proven route runner. Allen Lazard really struggled last year, and he's more of an outside threat. Maybe with Aaron Rodgers back, they could work that Green Bay magic back into it. But I think Corley's got a shot, especially if he can compete with Gibson during the season, just to get some of that screen work, some of the after-the-catch work that he was really famous for at Western Kentucky, right? Look, he's not a polished route runner. It's not a huge route tree, but it just feels like Corley is one of those guys when Aaron Rodgers has all those check-with-me calls and he has those screen calls that are built in and kind of the pocket quarterback RPO stuff that goes with all. It feels like Corley can make people miss, right? And then you've got two really elite guys at receiver who can make people miss after the catch, and Garrett Wilson, who Wilson does not get enough credit for how much he does after the catch as well. But if you have Wilson and Corley as guys you can just dump the ball to right at the line of scrimmage and they can make things happen 7, 8, 10 yards down the field after the catch, you've got two really good weapons with the ball in their hands. I know Corley's not off to the best start. He's behind Gibson as far as returning goes, kick returning, probably behind him right now to start out as the slot, but I still think he's going to get work this season and in a class that's not going to play a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, we briefly touched on it when we started our conversation about the Jets. They'll need him to, right? I mean, it's Garrett Wilson and then figure it out. Like it's a gladiators pool of who's going to come out and be that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, and they're going to need multiple guys to be able to step up in those spots. So I think that Malachi Corley, even if he's not in one of those spots to start this year, could certainly be a major piece for them. Maybe if he's hitting his groove sometime in December, making it into the playoffs. I mean, that's what they would want the most anyways, as long as they're going to be in position for that. I'll go Braylon Allen, the running back from Wisconsin. Yeah, I was a little bit lower on Braylon Allen than I think a lot of other draft analysts out there were, and that's because when I watched him specifically in 2023, I just didn't love how he felt in space. He didn't have a great feel for the finesse game, if you will, right? And when you think about playing running back, and when you think about, RB vision and breaking tackles and elusiveness, it's all towards the same goal, to get into space. You want to be able to get out from the trenches, get beyond the blockers, get beyond the second level, and get into space. So if you get into space and then you don't look comfortable in space, you don't know how to take advantage of that space, that's not great. We need you to be better in that, because that's the entire goal of being a great running back. And so I felt as though that was sort of an area and a feel for his game that was lacking in 2023. I felt much more comfortable watching him in those situations throughout the preseason, albeit, of course, like we said, a small sample size, but that power profile of his game, getting behind his shoulder pads, cracking these dudes just straight into the chest, lowering the shoulder. I mean, like, that's vintage Braylon Allen stuff, but he was also showing you a little bit of wiggle, getting that fancy footwork going, being able to find that open space. And I was encouraged by what I saw in the preseason. So I think that for as much as they want to ride Breece Hall and let him be that workhorse back, you can't give him, I don't think they're going to give him the Le'Veon Bell or the Larry Johnson treatment where he's getting like 450 touches this season. They're going to have to work somebody else in there. And I think Braylon Allen could be that guy. Let's go on to our next team. And we split here between the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills with the teams that each of us thought was going to make the wild card for this team, for this division. But let's start with the Miami Dolphins. I had the Dolphins going 10-7 and making the playoffs as a wild card. You had them going 9-8 and just missing out on it. I want to hear this. This is one of the best offenses in football. This team yielded some of the highest PFF grades around the entire league last year, and you got them narrowly missing the playoffs. So let's talk about potential offensive MVPs, but I also want to give you the freedom to talk about this team in the way that you want to, sort of explaining how you got to this record and this point with them.
So it kind of goes together. And for me, the offensive MVP is the obvious here. It's Tyreek Hill, right? Everything rolls through Tyreek Hill. You could argue he's the best receiver in football. He's one of the most dynamic threats that we've ever seen, right? The speed, the after the catch, the before the catch, the just everything. You could hand him the ball. You could toss him a screen. You could chuck it 60 yards downfield. Tyreek Hill straight up. I mean, honestly, if he didn't get hurt late in the year last year, I was in the boat where you could have voted Tyreek Hill for MVP. And it would have been reasonable. Ooh. Honestly. He would have been in my top 5 MVP guys had he not kind of been playing hurt. He tried to play through it. I believe he missed one game against the Jets, actually, with an ankle injury. But he was on pace for 2,000 yards last year. This is the guy that makes everything go, right? And I know they could still be semi-productive with just Jalen Waddle and some of their other weapons in the run game. But Tyreek Hill is just the X factor in all of this, right? And there's no question to me he's their best player on offense. He's their offensive MVP. Now, on that front, the Dolphins are loaded at the skill positions, right? They've got the fastest running back room maybe we've ever seen. Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, Jalen right now from Tennessee is another blazer. You've got Hill, you've got Waddle. They picked up Jonnu Smith in free agency, right? But they're testing the theory about just getting away from the trenches and being so loaded at the skill spots that it doesn't matter. And usually that doesn't work. You look at the Chiefs and you go, what did they do? After they lost the Super Bowl to your Buccaneers, they rebuilt the entire offensive line, and since then they've been wicked stable on the offensive line, and every year they are. And I know everyone got on about the tackle situation last year, but they have arguably the best interior three in football, right? The Ravens are good because they have a good offensive line every year. You've got teams that are building in the trenches. Philadelphia for years has had an elite offensive line. Detroit now maybe has the best offensive line in football. This is an issue for me, right? They were already, especially down the stretch last year, in the bottom half of the league in pass blocking grade. Now you lost Robert Hunt, who was the sixth best guard in football last year, and Connor Williams, who was very, very high in the rankings of centers. They're both gone. And you've got Teron Armstead, who's kind of been hurt like each of the last few seasons. And that's a big thing too. Last year, huge split when Armstead was out, right? And then you've got a rotation of guys at left guard, 20th in pass protection grade from week 7 on. I mean, obviously, look, you can't just survive with 5 offensive linemen, but I look at this team right now, and I'm not sure they can survive with their first 5, right? Isaiah Wynn, who is projected to start at left guard, I believe is still on the PUP list. Liam Eichenberg has struggled when he's played. They've got Aaron Brewer, who can be a good athletic run blocker for them at center, but really struggled in pass pro last year in Tennessee and really for his whole career. I have serious issues with the Dolphins if they have to just drop back and get away from their RPO game and get away from their run game. Tua's got no improvisation to him. Like, he runs their system as well as he can possibly run it, but you're not going to extend plays with Tua the way you would a Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, right? So you've got a guy who needs elite pass protection, and honestly, I don't think he has it. And the other side of this that I'll get into in a minute, I think you have a similar situation happening on their defensive line. They are testing the theory nowadays that skill players are the only thing that matters, and I don't think that's true.
Yeah, look, I do see their situation similarly to you. I think they can overcome it a little bit more than you do, obviously, with me thinking that they're going to win 10 games instead of 9. But I agree that it is an issue. Certainly my offensive MVP that I had for this team. And look, I'm not saying that like Tyreek, it doesn't play a major factor, or Jalen Waddle or Tua, but for offensive MVP, I said, whoever can step up on the offensive line. Like, that is who I put in this category, because it's got to be Teron Armstead staying healthy, Aaron Brewer being a mainstay, a stud at center for them. What is Patrick Paul going to be? Is he going to have to play? Austin Jackson on the right side of the line of scrimmage. Whatever Liam Eichenberg can be for them at whatever position he can play best. Like, whoever can step up at offensive line is my MVP. So I do see this situation similarly. The Dolphins, you kind of set the table there, and I saw Walt talking about this in the chat, shouting out Bro Schmo, who's a great YouTuber as well, covering the league. They had an opportunity in the first round where they ended up selecting. Jordan Morgan was still on the table. Graham Barton was still on the table. Tyler Guyton was still on the table. And those are just the first round picks. They picked Chop Robinson instead at number 21. I felt like they should have prioritized it the other way, because they ended up taking Patrick Paul at, what number did they take it? 55 in the second round. By taking Patrick Paul at number 55, you then narrowly missed out on Zach Frazier, who was picked 4 picks before at 51. And Jackson Powers Johnson was picked at number 44 as well. So he was picked 11 picks ahead of where they ended up selecting Patrick Paul. They just felt like, when the draft was over and you kind of look at it on paper and you look at, okay, who we could have had versus who we drafted, I wish they would have prioritized the offensive line player in the first round and the pass rusher in the second, because I think that would have given them the better return on investment. And instead, you were right. I think this is the biggest glaring hole on the team, and we are going to find out this year how little trenches matter. It feels really weird to say that, because like, trenches matter a lot. I'm with you. That's where football really is won and lost. And Miami is testing those limits of how much you can get away with. If I've got enough speed at wide receiver and at running back, if I've got enough chemistry between the offensive play caller and the quarterback, enough accuracy to be able to deliver the ball exactly where I need to when I need to deliver it, how much can we make up for not having the best offensive line out there? I think that that's a really good call out by you. Maybe I was too much of a coward to actually put it into their record and say that they weren't going to make the playoffs because of how great the offense was last year. But hey, I think that it's a really great point that you brought up there. What about defensive MVP for this team? Who do you got on defense?
You know what? They got a lot of flash in their secondary, right? They picked up Kendall Fuller at corner. They went and got Jalen Ramsey last year. He's still there. But their best player, honestly, is their free safety, Jevon Holland. This guy is just – he's when you make a list of the top 5 or 6 safeties, the elite guys in the league, he's up there, and he's the glue that holds this whole thing together. They had some injuries at corner last year. They had some struggles at corner last year. But the reason their secondary still stood a chance was because of Jevon Holland on the back end. Now, their defense is going to change a little bit, maybe get a little more aggressive than what they had with Vic Fangio, but honestly, I don't think it matters, really. I think he could play in any scheme. He could play single high. He can play two high. There's times he could cover man-to-man. Jevon Holland's just one of the elite players in this league, and despite having a lot of other big names, right? Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips off the edge, and Jalen Ramsey flipping it out between the inside and the outside and all this, Jevon Holland is the most consistent force in their defense. I'll take him as their defensive MVP this year.
So I'll give you a little peek behind the curtain on how draft things are going with PFF. So I'm finishing out safeties right this week. We're doing safeties over the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. It's the final position of summer scouting. I just watched Malachi Starks from Georgia, and extremely good football player, right? When I'm watching his tape and I'm trying to come up with his early pro comps, I'm thinking of some of the best safeties in the league, and I'm going back and I'm watching some film on these guys, and I'm like, okay, does their play style remind me of Starks and vice versa? I throw on Jevon Holland's tape. And normally, like I spend, I don't know, it kind of depends how long I want to watch these guys in the NFL to try to get these player comps. But I end up watching Jevon Holland for like a half hour. And I'm like, I'm talking to myself when I say this. This dude is so underrated. This is one of the best defensive backs in the league. Jevon Holland is so good at the safety position. He's got the elite athleticism. At this point in his career, playing enough years in the NFL, he's got that recognition, that anticipation. He can play from enough depth to be able to cover a ton of range to really put a ceiling and a roof on the offense when it comes to those vertical shots. But he's also so good at triggering downhill and getting in front of deep crossers and anything really that's over the middle just to undercut that in those robber rolls when you give him that freedom. He will come up and hit you as much as he can. He's a little bit, stringier of a safety. He's got a leaner build, but he'll come up and hit you with everything that he's got. I was just watching him over the last couple of days. So impressed with him. So it's hard for me to argue really with the Jevon Holland selection. I am going to go with Jalen Phillips though, because, outside of Jalen Phillips, especially with Bradley Chubb hurt as well, coming off of his ACL injury, and I believe it was the second to last week of the season last year. They need somebody to step up. And Phillips tore his Achilles last year as well, so he is also coming back from injury, but he's got to be the main pass rusher on this team. He was taking a little bit of a step back last year. He had an elite PFF grade in the 2022 season. Wasn't as good last year, but he is still an absolute stud. They have talked about in practices. He hasn't played in games yet, but they've talked about in practices, hey, he looks like the old Jalen Phillips again. They activated him from the PUP list, so he's going to be available in week 1. We'll see how much he plays. Obviously, the longevity of him and getting him fully healthy and confident towards November and December is what's most important. But I think that when you look at that defensive line, especially with no Christian Wilkins in there as well, no Bradley Chubb to start the season, probably for half of the season, they've got to get somebody that can regularly get after the passer. And I think that Phillips, a little unfair to ask of this of him coming off that Achilles injury, is going to have to step in and be a major player for them, even in the first, I would say, quarter of the season. So Phillips, to me, is the defensive MVP because I know you got talent in the secondary. I think the shout out for Jevon Holland's a good one, but I know you got talent in the secondary. What are you up front? Can you be good enough up front? And I think that Phillips is going to tell the tale of whether or not Miami's going to be able to be good enough on the defensive trenches. So what about breakout player? Who you guys breakout player?
I think to that same point, the guy who just has the most opportunity. Oh, sorry, breakout. Sorry, I skipped ahead to rookie. It's hard. Actually, this is a veteran team. But you've got some young guys on offense who could really take a leap. And I know fantasy football people know this guy took a leap last year in his rookie year, but he had 813 yards last year with not that many carries. That's Devon Achane. Look, I think he should actually, if he's healthy, transition into being the lead back, right? He's so explosive. He fits everything this team wants. And I know they've got depth. They've got Raheem Mostert. They've got Jalen right now. They're loaded at running back. But I think Achane, as long as his legs hold up, he should be their lead back. And he has every reason to think he could go for 1,300 yards. In this explosive an offense, it's fast-paced. The zone scheme fits him. We saw how explosive he was last year. As long as he's healthy, I think everyone in the league now, casual fans, obviously hardcore fans and fantasy people already know who he is. But Devon Achane could be in for a huge, huge year if that offensive line holds up and he just is healthy enough to get enough carries to do so.
Yeah, I think that Achane is certainly, a lot of people are really excited about what he could be. And so I think that is a pretty good shout out there for him to be one of the, we saw the sample sizes of how dynamic that he could be as a back last year, but just getting a full carry workload, even for as deep as that running back rotation is in Miami, it's gonna lead to some fireworks. All right, this one's sort of a deep cut. You kind of ready for this one? Because it's not a name that I think most people would list when they talk about breakouts for the Miami Dolphins. And I can even admit that it's a little bit of a stretch for him to really be this big-time breakout player. Benito Jones, the nose tackle, the 335-pound nose tackle that Miami brought over this year from the Detroit Lions. I think he could be a breakout player because I think that Miami needs him to be a breakout player. He was sort of a rotational interior defensive lineman for the Detroit Lions over the last couple of years. And I will admit, the PFF grades, not good. Not good for our guy Benito Jones over the last 2 years specifically. But I will say this. Against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in their divisional playoff game, had an 82.5 overall grade. I thought that he played really well in that game, and it was at least flashes of saying, okay, there's some impactful play here where I don't need Benito Jones to be a sack master, right? That's not what I'm asking him to be here in Miami. The reason why I'm saying that he's going to be a breakout player is because if we get closer to what we saw in that Buccaneers game, it's going to mean so much for the Dolphins defensive line because it starts up front at the nose tackle position. Around him, you got Calais Campbell, who's on the team now. I mentioned Chop Robinson. I've mentioned Jalen Phillips. When Bradley Chubb gets back, he will be into that mix as well. But the freedom that those guys have to really pin their ears back and get after the passer starts with how you're playing at the 0 and the 1 technique nose tackle position. So they brought Benito Jones in to be that sort of player. So, like I said, the PFF grades have not been great for Jones over the last couple of years, but I'm kind of going out on a limb and I'm saying, hey, he did sort of end the year on a high note, playing at a decent clip while the Detroit Lions were making their playoff run. Maybe he could continue that top play and we'll see the best version of Benito Jones moving forward. I think the Dolphins need that from him. So you were very eager to get to the rookie pick for the Dolphins. So who's your rookie pick?
Absolutely, staying with the trench theme. And honestly, look, I think it's the guy who's going to play the most. It's the guy you've mentioned as a first-round pick. That's Chop Robinson off the edge. And you got a lot of factors that play into him needing to be productive this year, right? You lost Andrew Van Ginkel, who was really their best edge player last year. Had a great season last year. Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips coming off injury. Christian Wilkins on the inside, leaving in free agency. They need more healthy pass rushers, right? And Chop finally got in some game action the last 2 games for the Dolphins in the preseason. He's a guy who's wicked talented. He really is. He needs some polish in his game, needs a little more field vision in his game, but man, we saw what he could do in a smaller sample at Penn State. He's got everything. Speed to power, freak athleticism, moves, inside counter moves that are just nasty. Honestly, Chop Robinson, if he develops his game early in the season enough to where he could help out while Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips are still recovering from their injuries, it adds a ton to their pass rush. Look, and honestly, he's got to work on some things in the run game. You mentioned Benito Jones is a really good call out too. It's just some help in the run game too, because I don't know that that's mentioned enough either. That guy like Chop Robinson, we'll see if he can play early downs and get better in the run game. But as a pass rusher, this guy's got everything you could want, especially the athleticism. He's a good fit if you do have everyone healthy in the rotation, and if not, they might need him to produce really, really early, especially if Chubb can't get back for week 1.
All right, so my rookie call out here for the Dolphins. When we talk about wide receiver trios in the NFL, a lot of people like to mention the Dolphins as one of the top 3. And I'm not saying you're wrong, but they often say, okay, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and then they throw in Odell Beckham Jr.'s name, who was signed with the Miami Dolphins. But Odell Beckham Jr., is still sitting on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform list. He means that he probably has some sort of a nagging injury that he suffered this offseason doing something. And I think that they have a rookie on the team who, I'm not going to say he's going to make Odell Beckham Jr. expendable, but I think they're okay with Odell maybe taking as much time as he needs to get back to fully healthy, because I think Malik Washington can be a serious player for this Miami Dolphins receiving group. This is a player who was top 5 or top 3 in college football last year at Virginia in total receiving yards and receiving yards per game. He was an absolute monster when it came to building that passing attack for the Cavaliers around exactly what he was going to do. He's a smaller player, but I watched him in person at the East-West Shrine Bowl last year. Uncoverable. All 3 days of practice. Just completely uncoverable. Nobody could handle this dude. The quickness that he had. He's got strong hands. They used him in the kick return and punt return game as well. So that's a bonus of not only making the team, but being somebody who stands out pretty early. They gave him some quick screens and some slants, but he can also give you a little bit of deep speed as well if you're not keeping him honest with how the coverage is aligned. So Malik Washington, man, he knows what it's like to get in the games and absolutely be somebody that you lean on. So more targets, more catches. It's not going to be something that makes you nervous. I think his skill set is really nice as a wide receiver 3 specifically on this team, and especially because so much attention has to go to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle for the threat that they are at all times, no matter where they could potentially get the ball. So I think it's a lot of single coverage opportunities for a guy like Malik Washington in the slot, and he is a stud at creating that separation with those short area movements. So Malik Washington. If Odell Beckham Jr.'s injury lingers around a little bit, then I think that he's somebody that we got to watch out for. All right, we're going to jump to the Buffalo Bills next, but before we get to that, got to talk to you about our friends over at DraftKings. We had the appetizer last week. Now it is time to feast, baby. College football is back. I know Dalton absolutely loves to hear that. Don't miss out on any of the action and jump in over at DraftKings Sportsbook. It is a full slate of games for week 1. I am already extremely nervous about my Florida Gators going up against the Miami Hurricanes this week, but, I'm nervous, but also on the outside, I'll tell you that I'm fully confident. Of course, we're going to get the big win. You know how it is. We'll also got a big matchup in Atlanta this week. Preseason number 1 taking on number 16. Number 1 place to bet touchdowns, DraftKings. DraftKings currently has the most TD market offered and leads in TD futures when it comes to season specials as well. Touchdowns can be scored on the ground, through the air, defensive efforts. Any of those methods can result in winning bets. This is going to be DraftKings' biggest college football season to date. Enjoy the ride. Now all the way through the expanded playoffs. Plus, all of the newbies out there who might be getting into this for the first time, getting into college football spirit, here is something special for you. DraftKings new customers bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. You can score big with DraftKings all college football season long. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook now and use that promo code PFF. That is promo code PFF for new customers to get those $200 in free bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours this season. If you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problems with gambling at 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, see dkng.co/FTBALL. All right, Dalton, you got the Buffalo Bills still making the playoffs here. What was it 10-7? I think 10-7 is what you had the Buffalo Bills at. So talk to me about the Bills, who you think their offensive MVP is before we get to defensive MVP, and why you have them still making the playoffs.
I have them 10-7 and getting to the wild card round. I don't believe, obviously, they'll win the division. I have the Jets for that. But look, if you have Josh Allen, you have a chance. I think he's proven to us enough time for as much criticism as he gets. I really think it's unwarranted. I think he's unquestionably one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the league, right? And you've got a guy who just now, year in and year out, ever since that third-year breakout, obviously I know it came with the Stephon Diggs trade, and now we're getting post-Stephon Diggs trade with them sending him to Houston, but I think Allen's now ascended beyond the part where, Stephon Diggs is the reason that he's successful. Listen, Trevor, he's had an overall grade above 90 in 4 straight seasons. The only other quarterback in PFF history to do that is Tom Brady. That's how good he is.
Never heard of him.
As a dual threat. Tampa Bay legend Tom Brady. That's what we know him for. look, if you have Allen, you have a chance. And it showed last year down the stretch when they installed Joe Brady as their offensive coordinator, started spreading the ball around more. Stephon Diggs didn't have a 100-yard game beyond, I think, week 5 or 6. That was the last time he had a 100-yard game last year. This offense started to succeed when they ran the ball with James Cook, when they ran the ball with Josh Allen, when they spread the ball around to guys like Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid. It didn't become so like Stephon Diggs gets 15 targets a game. I think they really got away from that for the better, right? I mean, we got to remember, they started 6-6 last year, and Allen it really felt like he was carrying the load, right? And then down the stretch, they got more balance. They started running the ball, and I think he gets shortchanged for how good he is at seeing coverages, right? Like, everybody wants to get on him about the Chiefs game, the playoff loss, right? They sat back. They didn't blitz him, I don't think, a single time all game. They sat back in too high, and Josh Allen did what Josh Allen actually does now, and that's take what the defense gives him. And he kept his team in the game against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, right? There's times where you look at the playoff game against the Steelers, right? Everybody goes, oh, he scored that long touchdown run. It was the Kenny Pickett fake slide. But you know what they don't talk about is I believe he got a 0 blitz on that play and recognized it pre-snap and just took off because, well, I don't know why anyone runs man coverage against Josh Allen with his feet. He does not get enough credit just for all around how good he is, honestly. They talk about the interceptions and this and that. He actually had the best turnover-worthy play rate of his career last season. So he's putting the ball in danger less than ever. He's one of the elite runners in the game. He's got probably maybe the strongest arm we've ever seen. If you have 17 in Buffalo, you've got a chance, and I think their weaponry is still underrated. I think he can carry this offense to the postseason at least. I don't think they're a Super Bowl caliber team, but that's not because of Josh Allen. He's a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. I think he's one of the 3 best quarterbacks in football. And if you have a guy that good running your offense, you always have a chance to make the playoffs, and I think they will.
It's really hard for me to pick against Josh Allen making the playoffs for the reasons that you mentioned. I think he's a top 3 quarterback in this league. When you look at how he played last year, second highest big time throw percentage of his career, lowest turnover worthy play percentage of his career. I mean, the guy is he is playing his best ball right now. He is an MVP caliber player, and he's one of the most impactful players in the entire NFL. That's why, to me, there's no way this team is winning less than 8 games, even with all the changes that they had. But to me, Dalton, I just wonder if all of those changes, you mentioned it before, everything that was on Josh Allen's plate last year, there's even more this year. And I fear that with the schedule they have, it's just going to be a little too much. You've got some changes on the defense that they've got to kind of get worked out. And we know the defense takes a little bit of chemistry to really become that type of a team. With the offense, obviously, you're moving on from Stephon Diggs. I know they didn't lean on him as much as they did in the past. The same for Gabe Davis. But with those new guys leaving, I mean, it is, again, chemistry building that will take time with that offense. You've got a little bit of changes along the offensive line as well. And Dalton, here's the schedule for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, it is a gauntlet here. They're playing Dolphins, the Ravens, the Texans, the Jets. Obviously, they play twice. The Dolphins, obviously, they play twice as well. But you're traveling from Buffalo to Seattle in Week 8. You're playing the Chiefs. You get them at home. But Week 11, you're playing the Chiefs. I mean, that's obviously a tough one. You're traveling to LA to face the Rams. You're traveling to Detroit to face the Detroit Lions. Like, outside of their division, which I think is one of the better divisions in the league, their outside schedule is tough, especially the fact that they're playing a lot of those games across the country on the road. And so I just wonder if it's a little too much. I obviously have Josh Allen as the MVP as well, because if they're going to make the playoffs, it is going to be on his shoulders, on his back, however you want to say it. I mean, if the Bills make the playoffs this year, Josh Allen is winning MVP. Josh Allen will win league MVP this year if the Buffalo Bills make the playoffs, because of how tough that schedule is and what will be asked of him in order to do so. So that's kind of where I'm at with Josh Allen. But what about defensive MVP? Who do you guys defensive MVP for this team?
I got a guy who's really broken out, and especially broke out last year with Von Miller's injury and never really recovering to come back, in a defensive front that's kind of been slowly slowly kind of fading on us, even though they still have some good players. You've got Ed Oliver on the inside who got his new contract. He's a good player. And you got guys like A.J. Epinesa who can make plays. But Greg Rousseau is their best defensive player now off the edge. Is he third year or fourth year man out of Miami? He's just become that guy that they thought he would be when they took him in the first round, right? And it's a shame that Von Miller did get hurt year before last, and then it carried into last year because they would have been a really, really good pair off the edge. But Rousseau is a guy that just brings constant pressure. I know the sacks, are going to come with pressure. It always happens, right? Or at least it's a huge correlator. But he's the guy. He's the guy up front that when you line up against Buffalo, you go, okay, we have to block that guy. He's got length. He's got athleticism. He's got power. He's got a little bit of everything. He's good in the pass and the run games. Greg Rousseau has become quietly one of the best defensive ends in the league. He's their best player. And they had some guys emerge on the back end as well. But I couldn't ignore just how good Rousseau was last year. And he's going to continue to be their best player on the defensive line.
I agree with you. I think that he's got to be their defensive MVP. I really do. For as much as I think they've got changes behind him and in the rest of the front seven in the secondary, Greg Rousseau has to continue to ascend to be that pass rusher. 90.1 preseason grade this year to, piggyback off of him having an 85.6 grade last season. I think this year he gets double-digit sacks for the first time in his career. And he's shown what kind of a mismatch player that he is. When we watched him in Miami, I remember scouting him. Like Miami, he was just such a uniquely built individual with those big long arms and that big frame of his. Like they played him everywhere from a 0 technique all the way out to a wide 7, a 5 technique, whatever he played the most there. And he's obviously got a home as an edge rusher here for the Bills, but it just goes to show you what kind of a mismatch player this is because of how he is built and how uniquely athletic he is for his size. So I think that he continues to take that step, and I agree with you that he is going to be MVP. Breakout player. Who you guys is the breakout player for this group?
So this is a fun one because he started to break out in the second half of last year. He had his moments. He had a long touchdown, I believe an 80-yard touchdown against the Jets, and that's Khalil Shakir at wide receiver. Look, I've loved this guy ever since he was at Boise State, and honestly, there was times in his Boise State tape a few years ago where basically the play was just throw it to Shakir because we have no other answers. And they would throw it to him 4, 5, 6, 7 plays in a row, and he would carry them to wins. Look, I thought when they drafted him, 1, they got an absolute steal. And 2, that was right around the time that Cole Beasley had left or was on the way out. And I thought he could be a direct replacement to Cole Beasley, right? And we remember when they had Beasley and Diggs and John Brown back, they had a really good 11 personnel setup. The Bills were arguably the best 11 personnel, 1 back, 1 tight end, 3 receivers. One of the best, if not the best, 11 personnel team in the league. They started to get away with that last year when they drafted Dalton Kincaid. A lot more 12 personnel with 2 tight ends. Shakir wasn't on the field as much. And one thing they noticed in the midseason last year when Dawson Knox got hurt, and they really only had Dalton Kincaid to work with at tight end, they were forced to go back to 11 personnel. It wasn't the original plan, but that meant Shakir was the guy getting on the field more. And all of a sudden, they rediscovered that magic in that package, right? So you're talking about now you've got Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid. They're still going to have times where they can go to 2 tight ends with Kincaid and Knox on the field, but I think they should mix it up a lot more. I think Shakir has shown he can be efficient enough in that offense. He did it last year at 76.9 receiving grade. They've been looking for a replacement for Cole Beasley ever since he left. Josh Allen loved finding Cole Beasley on third downs and one-on-one situations. This is a guy I think who has the same skill set and might even be better than after the catch than Beasley was. I think it makes a huge difference. The more personnel packages, the more looks that Buffalo can give opposing defenses, the better, right? Again, we talk about there isn't going to be one guy that gets 120 targets this year. But I think it's possible, especially on third down, that Shakir, if they play enough 11 personnel, he could lead the team in targets. He could lead the team in catches, and he could make a lot of clutch catches for them. We even saw him in the playoffs against Pittsburgh with a couple of big catches in that game. Shakir, to me, is a guy with talent. He's a guy with savvy. He's a guy Josh Allen can trust, especially on late downs. And if the Bills are going to mix up personnel packages and get out of some 12 personnel sometimes and go to 11, then Shakir is a key guy for their offense.
Yeah, I like Shakir a lot. I liked him when he was coming out of Boise State. Again, he felt like a guy who no matter how much they put on his plate while he was at Boise State, he was going to deliver for them. And I think he's been underutilized in Buffalo. It's been understandable why some of the guys have been in front of him on the depth chart, but now is his time. And I think that he's going to be able to show up, and I like that one. Charles G is asking us to shout out Terrell Bernard, the linebacker for the Buffalo Bills, in the chat here. Shout out to him. 999 snaps played last year, the most on the Bills defense. So this is obviously somebody that they see as a workhorse and somebody who we have a decent pass rush grade to as a blitzer, actually. 16.7 pass rush win percentage. So could be a good call out there from Charles G as somebody who can help attack the pocket and help that defensive line that we were talking about when we were going through our little Rousseau chat. Dalton Kincaid is the breakout player for me. I think that Dalton Kincaid has the ability to be wide receiver one on this team, right? I know that he's labeled a tight end, but I think that he could lead this team in targets. I know people are talking about Shakir and people are talking about Keon Coleman and guys like that, but I think that there is a good chance that they're going to try to run this offense through Dalton Kincaid, who I think was one of the best receiving tight ends out of his class, although it was a good one that he was in. So that's kind of saying a lot, and I don't want to disrespect some of the other guys that were in that class because it was a really good one, but he was sort of up at the top, and I know a lot of people talk about him as a tight end one type of a player, and it's because of what he can do as a receiver. So fully healthy year from Dalton Kincaid. I think that he leads the team in targets. He leads the team in receiving yards, receiving touchdowns. I mean, kind of who knows? Those are always a little bit of a coin flip, but I think that that is within the realm of possibility as well. So I got to shout out Dalton Kincaid. Last one, who's breaking out from the rookies from the Buffalo Bills? Who you got?
Staying at the same position, I'm going with Keon Coleman on the outside, right? We already covered Shakir and Kincaid on the inside. I'm going Keon Coleman. I really think he's going to have every opportunity to succeed in this offense. I know he's not the most polished route runner, but when you talk about a guy who can make contesting catches, go up and get balls out of the strike zone, look, the Bills haven't had a guy like that. Even Stephon Diggs, he made a few out of, extending his catch radius kind of catches. Keon Coleman's just exceptional with it, right? You're talking about a guy who's 6'4", former basketball player, just a freak athlete, a guy that Alec can look to on the move to make tough catches in tight coverage. I really think Coleman, I do. I just think this whole offense is going to come together. I don't think they're going to have as many issues as people think, as long as they can run block and stay balanced in the run game. But with Coleman and Shakir and Samuel and Kincaid and Knox, all these weapons, I think Coleman's going to contribute just as much as the rest of these guys. And again, I don't think he has to be the movable chess piece that Stephon Diggs was. I think Curtis Samuel and Khalil Shakir can do that. Coleman just has to make the tough catches for him, right? And just make those catches, the 50-50 balls, sometimes you see the freak one-handed catches that just blow everybody away. And look, I know fans already love him for the world's best press conferences already, but he's just as talented on the field, okay? It's a little bit of both. I mean, I think he's going to put up a really good rookie season. I don't know about like a rookie of the year type season because they're going to be very balanced on offense, but I think he is going to be one of the better rookie receivers, especially with Josh Allen throwing to him.
Hey, you got faith from your lips to hopefully God's ears if you're a Bills fan for sure, because I think it might take a little bit of time for Coleman, but hey, I'd love to see him put him on a show because you mentioned kind of that athletic background. I mean, he's got some crazy athleticism. I'd love to see it in Buffalo. The best rookie that I'm going to go with Cole Bishop, the versatile defensive back in their secondary. When Bishop was drafted by the Buffalo Bills on draft weekend, I remember immediately just thinking, yes, perfect sense, because Bishop was such a versatile player while he was with the Utah Utes. In his career, he had 727 snaps as a box safety, so sort of a strong safety that was a lot closer to where the box was. 449 snaps as a slot defender, 421 as a deep safety, a true versatile defensive back. And why? Is because the dude plays with his hair on fire at all times, and Utah wanted to give him the ability to roam around the field, play a lot of different positions, and honestly, just get him as close to where the ball was going to be, where they thought the ball was going to end up while the play was going on, whether it was a run play or a pass play, because again, he would fire downhill with tenacity. I mean, he's a hyper competitive player. Missed a little bit of time throughout this training camp with a shoulder injury, but it looks like it's not going to be something that's too serious. He's going to be back in that lineup, or at least in the early parts of the season. They're going to be able to work him in there. I don't know exactly where he's going to play when it comes to the slot versus deep or strong safety roles, but I think they're going to try to rotate him in a lot of different ways, because no matter where you put him, and even with him being a rookie, he's going to give you everything he's got. And it felt like a Sean McDermott type of a defensive back that we have seen from Buffalo and the culture there over the last couple of years. So I'm really excited to see Cole Bishop in that defense. I think they're going to let this dude fly, and I think that he's going to reward them for those early snaps that he is going to get. Final team that we are going to talk about here is the New England Patriots. I have them going 4-13 on the year, obviously missing the playoffs. You had them going 2-15, obviously missing the playoffs as well. Overall thoughts on just New England's situation, and then give me your offensive MVP as we start this convo on that.
Yeah, I could see them in that 4 or 5 win range. Obviously, just the way it shook out when I was going through this schedule, I was like, man, they're an underdog maybe in every single game they're playing, right? And they're a really young team with a really young offense, and I think it's going to be tough for them, especially with this offensive line in front of either Jacoby Brissett or Drake May, right? And I think they can compete on defense. Their defense could get a couple more wins than I have them down for. Obviously, the problem is it just feels like every Patriots win is going to feel like an upset this year, right? They are just in that rebuilding stage. Belichick leaves, still recovering from Tom Brady leaving and Mac Jones kind of not panning out the way they wanted, but no, I think they need to figure a lot of things out, especially offensively. To me, this is a year that is solely about the development, however they do it, of Drake May, right? And getting Drake May reps, surrounding him with, and developing weapons around him, right? And hopefully this offensive line stays in shape. But I'm going to go with an offensive MVP up front, an offensive lineman. I'm going to go with Mike Onwenu, who it looks like he's going to play right guard this year full-time. And he had a career-low 71.5 overall grade last season. But 2 years ago, as their full-time right guard, because they're always switching him between guard and tackle, this year he's going to stay at guard. He stayed at guard 2 years ago at a 79.3 overall grade in 2022. So I'm going to go Mike Onwenu. They need this offensive line to show up, if nothing else, just to keep Drake May healthy. We already saw Jacoby Brissett suffer an injury last night. We'll see if he can play week 1 or if May is going to be forced to start week 1. But that's what it's about. It's about protecting Drake May, hopefully getting this run game going. But Mike Onwenu is the one guy on their offensive line they can really, really count on.
Yeah, I think it is a really good shout out. Jordan Reed of ESPN, friend of the show, tweeted out last night, first round selection for the New England Patriots. It's going to be an offensive tackle. And I kind of jumped in on the fun and said, Will Campbell from LSU, you are New England Patriot. And I think that could very well be in their cards a year from now, but somebody's got to step up for the 2024 season. And you mentioned, I think that Mike Onwenu is probably their top candidate to be able to do it, but they're obviously going to need much more than him. The guys that they drafted in the middle parts of draft weekend, I'm a little skeptical of their ability to come in and play right away. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like for Caden Wallace, with him stepping in. I know they drafted Layden Robinson too, but I think it's going to be a little bit of time for those guys before they are really cracking that starting lineup. At least that's what I thought of them on their scouting report. My MVP is Drake May, because I think that obviously the team is going to go as far as Drake May does. And, I think it was interesting, Gerard Mayo on the Greg Hill show this morning, which is a Boston radio station, said, quote, Drake has outplayed Jacoby. But he also went on to say, now in saying that, we have to take the full body of work going all the way back to the spring and the beginning of camp. And we'll see where we end up. But those conversations are the ones that will be happening here over the next couple of days. He also talked about sort of when you start that rookie QB, you don't want to start them too early. And so I think that they're trying to play with a lot of that. I really do feel as though, despite Drake playing really well, I think Gerard Mayo in New England knows where they are with the offensive line. And I think that they were probably hoping to get about anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks out of Jacoby Brissett before they then were able to throw Drake May out there for the second half of the season, if you will. And they were hoping that the offensive line was going to be playing better at that point. The offense was just going to be in a better place at that point, and they were going to be able to protect their franchise investment. I don't know if they're going to have that luxury now, especially with Jacoby hurting his shoulder, which early reports, it doesn't seem like it's, too bad of an injury. But again, are you going to throw that guy out there? It looked like he was his throwing shoulder that was hurt. So Drake May is the offensive MVP, whether he starts in week 4, whether he starts in week 1, whether he starts in week 8, it's all Drake May for me. But what about defensive MVP? Who do you guys defensive MVP for this team?
I'm going to go with a guy who's really become a reliable force for them at linebacker, and that's Jelani Tavai. At 86.8 overall grade last year, was 4th best among NFL linebackers, and he was one of just 5 linebackers in the league with an 80-plus run D and coverage grade. He's one of the most balanced players in football now, and he's developed into just a plus starter for them at linebacker. And look, New England, Gerard Mayo's still going to try to win these games on defense, right? You've got guys on the back end. You've got guys up front like Keon White, Tavai, Josh Uche came back. It's a really unfortunate that Christian Barmore is now out indefinitely with the blood clot issue. He was becoming a star in the interior, but Tavai has really become a nice force for them at linebacker, a good leader for their defense, a guy run and pass who can produce. We see a lot of linebackers who can either only play run defense and have to come out on passing downs or vice versa. Tavai is a true 3-down linebacker who can play all throughout the game. He's the leader of this defense. This front seven is going to have to keep them in games so their offense can find ways to manufacture points, And Tavai is really the leader of that, and he's going to be the driving force.
I'm gonna go with, and I think that's a really good shout out, but I'm gonna go with Christian Gonzalez because before Christian Gonzalez had the shoulder injury that sidelined him for most of last season, he was playing really, really well. In those 4 games that he played, and I know he only played 4 games, I understand people, but 80.0 overall defensive grade, 71.3 run defense grade, 75.1 pass rush grade when they even sent this guy at the pocket, and a 79.3 coverage grade. Christian Gonzalez looked as advertised when he was out there. He got an interception himself. He had a dropped interception as well, so it could have even been 2. Already had 3 forced incompletions, which was 12% on the times that he was targeted. I think with a fully healthy year for Christian Gonzalez, he is somebody who could absolutely take this next leap as well to be one of those top young corners in the game. So I'm going to go with Christian Gonzalez there. This is actually a very good transition because I was going to ask you who your breakout player is next, but I can see it here on the list. So go ahead and tell me why you think Christian Gonzalez is going to break out here, buddy.
I'm with you. You hit it all on the head. He looked like he was going to be a star moving into the later parts of the season. It's really a shame. I believe he tore his labrum in that game against Dallas. But no, I think to me, look, they showed us early on what they think of him. In their first game against Philadelphia, they just went ahead and shouted him on A.J. Brown. And look, were the results always great? No, but nobody's results are great against A.J. Brown if you line up against him every snap, right? But the fact that they trusted him with that, he competed really hard. He's got long arms. He's got good speed. And that one interception against Miami you mentioned, he was actually lined up as a free safety on that play and drifted back like any single high free safety would, and it just looked so natural for him. This guy is super athletic. He's got some of the best footwork of any young corner in football. The length is going to be an issue, especially in press coverage. He's got the whole package. He's got all the athletic talent to be one of the best corners in the league. I think he was on his way to being, Devin Witherspoon really last year was the top rookie corner by far. He was a superstar. But I think Gonzalez, had he played the whole season, would have been something close to that. On the outside, he's going to be a star player. I think he's going to be moving forward the best player in their secondary. I'm with you on Gonzalez.
Yeah, so my breakout player, I'm going to go with Keon White along the defensive line. Now, I thought it was going to take a little bit of time for White, coming out of Georgia Tech. He was a big body defensive lineman who showed a ton of athleticism. I mean, the potential was through the roof for this guy. The explosiveness that he had at his size and his weight, I mean, it was very alluring. And I can understand why the Patriots were really in on drafting him. But I felt like it was going to take a little bit of time for him to certainly be able to win as a true pass rusher instead of just being bigger and stronger and more athletic than the guys that he was going up against at the college level. We already saw flashes of that as the year went on last year. You saw some more technique from him. You actually saw some good pass rush moves, and I think that you're seeing that in the preseason as well. Keon White last year, just a 52.6 pass rush grade with 1 sack. This preseason, though, 74.5 pass rush win grade, 6.3% pass rush win percentage last year, 16.7% pass rush win percentage in the preseason. Small sample size. It's the preseason. I get it. All the caveats and context in the world. I don't care. Stop raining on my parade. I'm getting hyped about Keon White. I think he's a big-time breakout player for the Patriots and somebody that they're absolutely going to need depending on Christian Barmore's availability. Obviously, that being up in the air just makes White's role more pivotal for them to really be able to stand out. And they've utilized him everywhere from like a 2-eye as an interior defensive lineman all the way out to, again, like a 5 technique, hand in the dirt 4-3 defensive end. So they're not afraid to use this guy in a lot of different ways and be a true amoeba front as we have seen the Patriots be in years past. So last one, best rookie on the team. Who you got?
I have to go with the obvious here. I don't know when he's going to start, but he should start very soon, and that's Drake May. Look, I think he's shown us in the preseason he can make all the throws. He showed us at North Carolina he can make all the throws. He led college football in big-time throws over the last 2 seasons by a pretty wide margin, right? And I think the questions for May's success early on is going to be 2 things that really don't have a whole lot to do with him. One is pass protection, right? We've got a hole at left tackle. We've got a 32-year-old center. We finally got a right guard who I think we're just leaving there. They had a lot of injuries last year that caused it. Sidy So now is a guy at left guard who's going to start, who they never expected to start last year, but played pretty well. Better in the run game than the pass game, but pass protection so May can throw the ball vertically, and weapons who can get down the field so May can throw the ball vertically. I look at Drake May as a passer as something like Ben Roethlisberger. This guy's a classic drop-back vertical passer. He wants to throw the ball down the field, into that intermediate middle of the field, chucking it over the top to post routes, things like that. If Javon Baker can be that guy, if Jalen Polk can be that guy, if Demario Douglas can be that guy, whoever it is that can win vertically, and then whoever it is up front that can allow May to throw the ball vertically, give him enough time to do so, that's where May is going to succeed. He's not going to be a quick game 5-yard out passer. I think we really need to start thinking about him more as a Justin Herbert, Ben Roethlisberger type of passer where we want to rip the ball downfield. But I need time to do it. I need guys to get open downfield to do it. Maybe I need a little play action scheme to open things up there for him. But it's a lot of variables around May that I question more than May's talent itself. He's super talented. We can see it. The arm talent, he can move. We saw the throw rolling to his left yesterday for a touchdown that got negated by a penalty. He can do all of those things. Like, this is the level of difference in arm talent. And I'm not saying Mac Jones is necessarily a bad football player. He's just different, right? It's quick game. It's winning with accuracy and smarts and doing all the West Coast things. Drake May's a little bit different. We're trying to get down the field. The Patriots had no explosiveness downfield last year, right? Drake May is the first piece of that. Now they need to develop everything around him to allow him to do it.
Yep. I'm with you. I love Drake May. He was so much fun to watch in North Carolina. I think he's going to be a stud in this league. I really do. Javon Baker is my rookie breakout player. And, Dalton, I feel bad for Jalen Polk because I think everybody's trying to be really trendy and pick Javon Baker. And I'm sticking with Javon Baker because I like him a lot as the 4th-round pick and not the 2nd-round pick. But I do kind of feel bad for Polk because Polk's probably sitting here like, well, hold on, wait a second. I'm also good at wide receiver. But, the fantasy football mindset and I got to find my sleeper type of guy. A lot of people were talking about Baker. But, hey, Jalen Polk's going to be fantastic as well. But I think what they are going to get out of Baker as a 4th-round pick is going to be fantastic return on investment. I legitimately believe that this is going to be – they have their wide receiver 1 and 2 for the future. If they were to ever get like a superstar wide receiver, for example, if the Brandon Ayuk trade would have happened and their top 3 wide receivers would have been Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Polk is your 2, Javon Baker is your 3. Holy cow, man. Like, now all of a sudden we're cooking with gas in New England. And obviously you're throwing in Pop Davis as well. I don't mean to disregard him because he's a fantastic talent too. But you've got a really, really nice young receiver group in New England. I think Javon Baker is one of those players who he just plays. He is so competitive at all times. Former Alabama 4-star recruit before he went to UCF. He's got good vertical speed. He's got really great body control and footwork to be able to run the entire route tree. He is somebody who is going to give you way more than a normal 4th-round pick would when it comes to that early return on investment. So I'm excited to see Javon Baker with New England and Drake May whenever Drake May ends up getting that full-time starting quarterback role. That was fun, buddy. I don't know. Anything else about this division? Some final thoughts on this division before we get out of here?
I'm just curious. Do you have a hot take about it? I feel like we should each do just some hot take about each division. You got anything that's like just at least mildly hot that you could go with for any of the 4 teams or the whole thing as a whole?
I don't know if this is a hot take, but like it feels like a hot take for us to both be saying what we're saying. Like, I don't have the Bills in the playoffs. You don't have the Dolphins in the playoffs. I feel like that's kind of like a hot take in and of itself with those teams not really being there. I don't know if I have do you have one off the top of your head that could be like a hot take? I feel like because you brought it up like that, you're scheming, you're stewing over there, and you're ready to get something off your chest.
I had one in mind. It's gutsy, but I think it makes a lot of sense when you consider what he's already done. I'll stick my neck out there. Breece Hall, Offensive Player of the Year.
Oh, I love it.
Run game, receiving game, already a massive receiving grade. We've seen what he can do after the catch, and I think with a better offensive line, if it's at least above average, I think he could. I think he could lead the league in yards from scrimmage and win Offensive Player of the Year. I really do. I know the spotlight's on Rodgers and Garrett and all that stuff in the defense, but Breece, if this O-line is what it's supposed to be, Breece is in for a crazy level year.
I love the take. I think that's a perfect way to end the show. And to let you guys know that we are doing every single division before the season gets kicked off. The next episode that we have, we're doing the AFC North. Man, that was a tough division. I don't know how tough it was for you, Dalton, but it was tough for me. Who's going to make the playoffs? Who's going to win that division? How much are the Bengals going to bounce back? What's Lamar going to be like? Are the Browns actually going to emerge? Can Mike Tomlin go above 500 again? You'll have to tune in next time for when we're going through these divisional previews. I'm Trevor Sickman. That is Dalton Wasserman. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to the PFF NFL show. We will see you guys for the next division later.